Hello there, dear viewer. Welcome to another one of my videos. Once upon a time, my mother had an idea, which is that she would like to take these glass bottles and cut them to make vases out of them. And naturally, as is the case with any woman, whenever they need a solution, they ask me to provide it, naturally. So, I have decided to make a bottle cutting jig, and things are gonna get big in this one. Just to give you a sneak peek, yeah, we'll see how this one turns out. Let's get into action. Alright, so now I'm going to be assembling the jaws, which will allow for the bottle to be securely mounted to the base. Now, I have these guiding rails into which you put these sort of jaws, and this rail slots into the base. So what I have to do now is just glue into these holes these little brass inserts. That way I have a thread in them and I can just then screw them to the base. So let's do that. Alright, so I have it in this state. What I have to do now is glue in these nuts. These will allow... Alright, so first what I have to do now is glue in these small nuts, like so. This will allow for installation of threaded rods that will help operate these sliding jaws. And then I have to glue in these slightly bigger nuts from the bottom, and these will allow for housing of threaded guide rods. These guide rods will have another jig on top of them. The threaded rods will allow for adjustment of height, and on this jig I will have this glass knife that will be able to slide all the way around. So yeah, let's glue in the nuts, then I will assemble in the threaded rods, and then we can continue with the build. Alright, so two things I would like to mention here. As you could have seen, I have tightened down these rails with screws, which screw into the brass inserts that I have glued into these rails. The big issue here is that those brass inserts are meant to be heated up, and pushed into an undersized hole in the plastic. That way it grips in much more tightly than with the glue. And what has been happening to me is that the torque on the screws is higher than the strength of the glue holding it in the plastic, and they start to slip and spin inside. But it got me thinking, and I don't need those screws at all because I have these thumb screws which help secure the jaws and they keep the rails in place, so I can just skip the screws and the inserts altogether, which is great. A simplification that's very beneficial to realize. Now, the second thing I want to mention. So, if we take a bottle and we put it in and we try to secure it, I would like to mention that the thumb screws work pretty well. But the issue is, okay, that seems pretty tight. The issue is that these jaws don't really exert enough clamping force to keep the bottle in place. So I already have a improved design of these jaws, and all I have to do is print it and test it out. So without further interruption, let's try the improved jaws now. Also, one minor thing, I can already start with attaching these threaded rods that will help guide the other jig on which the knife will glide and hopefully allow to make a cut. So let's install these rods, then improve the jaws, and then start designing the secondary jig, which allows for height adjustments and will have the knife gliding on top of it for the bottle cutting. Ah, come on, fuck! Okay, so on the subject of the jaws, I've already gone through 3 different iterations. The first one, you can tell the surface area is very small, plus the plastic glides easily, smoothly over the surface of the glass. In the second iteration, I try to increase the surface area, and I've added like this textile pad in hopes of increasing the friction. Didn't really help much, as you can see. So I've done a little bit of digging, and apparently a great way to secure glass like this, to clamp it down, is with rubber. So I have these rubber pads, and I just want to show you a demonstration, right? So the textile pad, very easy. The rubber one, when you apply force, it barely moves on it. So I'm gonna glue these in to the surface of the jaws, like so, and hopefully that's gonna solve our problems with the clamping force. So let's get into it. Yes! Woo! Nice! So yes, as you can see, the rubber finally provides enough clamping force for the bottle to stay in place. Nice! Yes! Finally it works. Alright, whew. So, now that the clamping mechanism works, now I have to design the jig that's gonna sit here. Is going to be height adjustable. I'm thinking of making it height adjustable with the help of these nuts. I will probably 3D print like a cover on them so it works sort of like a thumb screw. And it's gonna sit on top of it, and with the nuts you will be able to get height elevation, and then we're gonna have to get in the knife. Now the clearance here is gonna be interesting. I'm probably gonna cut it off here. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. Alright, so I have 3D printed the secondary jig. This one is going to attach to these threaded rods, like so. It's gonna need a little bit of convincing to go into place, but it's right there. And then I have this sort of gliding holder that's gonna sit inside this groove. And as you can see, it is allowed to freely rotate around the bottle. Again, the idea is that the knife will be held inside of it. I'm gonna have to adjust it a little bit, and it will allow for a precise and level cut of the bottle. What I have to do now is glue in nuts, because I have to put in these securing rings. These securing rings ensure that this gliding knife holder stays in place. And that's pretty much it. Once I have that, I will have to play up with a little bit with the holder of the actual knife, but I believe I'm getting closer. So let's not yap anymore and get to assembling this and testing it. Alright, so I have a second version of the glide ring for the knife. I have added these attachment points where I'm going to be adding these little levels. Right, like so. This should help ensure that when a cut is taking place, that it is level. So I'm going to attach that, secure it with these two rings, and at that point I'm just going to be playing with the geometry of the knife holder, ensure it fits in and that you are able to make the cut as you go around the bottle. So without further interruption, let's get to that. I think I'm reaching a final point of this build where I'm going to be playing with the knife holder geometry attachment. So let's hope it's gonna go well. Yeah, and I actually think I'm gonna end the video here. And the reason for that being is that as I was working on this bottle cutting jig, and I was thinking of ways how to make this gliding knife work here on top, I just sort of realized that I could approach this bottle cutting jig from a completely different perspective. And I already have in mind a more simple design. I think what's going to be a more effective design. But that means I'm going to shelf this design. But I wouldn't necessarily call this a failure, because working on this and learning from my mistakes with this one has allowed me to change my perspective and sort of realize that I could approach this whole project differently and more effectively. So yeah, if you have been watching this video up until this point, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you in part 2. To give you a sneak peek, in part 2 I would like to approach this problem or this engineering design by actually securing the bottle vertically and attaching it to ball bearings. So the idea is that the bottle will rotate, and in a specific height you will only press the knife towards it, rotate it on the ball bearings, and make the cut. So let's see how that one is going to turn out, and then compare the two, the father and the son of bottle cutting jigs, I guess. Anyways, have a nice day. Bye.